You'll find, actually, if you include the whole of Asia in that, we'll be fine, I think. There's no worries on that score. And Trevor Phillips is with me now. We're also streaming this live on the website, so if you don't believe me, you can see the pictures. Trevor, it's lovely to see you.
Good to see you, James. And thank you very much for inviting me in.
You're very welcome, and I'm looking forward to the programme this evening, although in a way I'm glad I haven't seen it before talking to you, because we can work out how much is hype and hyperbole. For example, Richard Littlejohn coming close to canonising you in the Daily Mail earlier this week, and how much of it is reality. What is it about? What is the programme actually about?
Well, the essential point of the programme is that we are a society that's becoming more diverse, particularly by ethnicity. You know, when I was born, fewer than 1 in 21 people were not white in this country. Today, it's, getting on for 1 in 6. And by the time my children are my age, it'll be 1 in 3. So more different kinds of people, different kinds of traditions, different kind of cultures rubbing up against each other. There are two things which I think we're at risk of. One is that inevitably, though I am totally in favour of a more diverse society and all the good things it brings with it, energy, talent and all the rest of it, it also brings some issues of frictions. We've got to work out how we get on together, how people preserve their traditions and at the same time live tranquilly alongside other people. And we've got to have some new rules. And at the moment, because we won't acknowledge that, I think we are not doing very well at working out those rules.
Why do you think the people who are cheering the loudest before the programme is actually being broadcast are the people who will be deeply unhappy about the fact that diversity is increasing and deeply opposed to the notion that we should be living tranquilly?
Well, I think that you've got to be careful not to necessarily characterise other people's views in that way. It may be that some people are completely happy about the idea of diversity, but they are unhappy that we haven't yet worked out how to manage that diversity. And in the programme, we make clear that actually, from my point of view, it's completely positive, but unless we manage our relations properly, we end up with two things happening. One is there's stuff we can't say, and somebody pays a price for that. Rotherham, Rochdale, and in my case, Victoria Clambier, and you indeed figure in the programme.
What?
Indeed, yes. You figure in the programme yourself, because you were, I think, the first voice on the morning of 7/7, saying something's happened, and we examined that particular incident. So there's that issue. And secondly, unless we have a view about how communities operate, we can slide into something I talked about 10 years ago, which is communities which basically turn in on themselves, don't have much to do with other people. We all kind of rub along, but actually we don't really mix. Some research has been done recently by the Social Integration Commission, which says, contrary to what everybody thinks, particularly in London, the capital where we're sitting is the place where people are least likely to mix socially when they have the opportunity with somebody who's not of their ethnic or religious background. And the reason we think for that is happening is because London is a place where you have most choice about who you mix with, and the way that our society works at the moment, when we have a choice, we go close to home. And that's got to be wrong in a diverse society.
Well, close to home geographically doesn't mean...
I mean culturally.
Okay.
I mean culturally.
Let's go through some of the things, because, you're kind enough on occasion to have listened to this programme, and you know that most radio phone-in hosts would be out of business by tea time if any of the things you've listed as not being allowed to say were not allowed to say. I've taken calls on this programme for 10 years from people telling me that most black murder victims are killed by blacks, but when they tell me that, they are often trying to portray the skin colour as being a causal factor in the murder, as if by dint of being black, and you're a man of colour yourself, for people who don't know and who haven't gone to lbc.co.uk to see the live streaming, the people who want to say that, the people who are most keen to say that most often are people who want your skin colour to be used as proof of your criminal tendencies.
Look, there's a general point about this. Because a bad guy can whistle a good tune doesn't make it a bad tune. My point is about if you're looking for an underlying motivation for what we're doing, it is to take that conversation, and I'm not at all insulting your listeners,
sure,
but I want to take this conversation out of the realm of extremists and nutters. And, part of the thing that you describe is what makes it very difficult for this conversation to happen because, as you say, some of these statements, all of which, by the way, are factually true.
Precisely.
Tend to be the sorts of things that people associate with slightly out of control people who are basically racists or bigots. Now, a fact is not racist. A fact is a fact. The question is, how do you then use it? And in the program, one of the things we say is, actually, you can say Jews are rich and powerful, and you can then decide, it's a conspiracy. Actually, you could also decide something different. You could say, this is a fantastic community that worked really hard, has earned its prosperity, has contributed massively to our society, and then actually, what they're doing is not genetic. It's something about their behaviour and their priorities, and the rest of us can learn something from that.
And you can't tackle the conspiracy theorists if they're not allowed to. If no one is allowed to make the original point from which the conspiracy has grown.
Well, you know exactly what happens. People say this kind of thing, and the Jewish community has been particularly a victim of this. People say this kind of stuff, then everybody says, "Oh no, you can't say that," so that nobody can then challenge the interpretation that follows, because you never get past the first step of the conversation. My view is, let's put it out there. Somebody on another less distinguished radio programme than this said to me, asked me, should he be able to say, you know the person, pugnacious radio host, said, should he be able to say, I don't like you because you're black? I should have given a sort of diplomatic political answer, which was all about there are good folk and bad folk in every community. But actually, he caught me in the hop, and I said what I think most people from minorities would say. Yeah, I'd prefer you told me that, and then I can work out whether I like you enough or you're important enough to me to try and persuade you different. That's the sort of conversation you should be having in a diverse society.
And that would apply to the other, most of the other 9 things as well. Romanians are far more likely to be pickpockets. But again, people extrapolate from that. Indeed, someone in this studio extrapolated it not that long ago, someone who I think appears on your programme. Nigel Farage extrapolates from that he doesn't want to live next door to Romanians. So you can understand where the desire came from to put the lid on these sort of feelings, because they are usually most loudly expressed by people who do then move on to, well, I demand the right to say I don't like you because you're black, and I demand the right to say I don't want to live next door to brown people, Romanian people or Irish people.
But you see, we've made this mistake for over a century, and I use the term over a century for obvious historical reasons. We say, if we can stop people saying things, then we'll stop them thinking it, and it'll all go away.
And it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. If you stop people saying what's on their minds, you still don't remove it from their hearts. I'd prefer people to say this. And by the way, Nigel can say what he likes about Romanians, but then that gives the Romanians an opportunity to have a view about whether they want to live next to Nigel Farage.
Yes, it's a valid point. Can I just pick you up on a couple of the stranger ones before we could continue with the heavier ones? This line about smart parents put their kids in class with Asians. Yeah. Well, because the Asian performance in British classrooms is demonstrably higher than any other ethnicity, so smart, white, or non-Asian parents want their kids to be in class with lots of Asian kids.
A couple of facts. Chinese children outperform every other child. But the more significant thing is that it makes no difference whether those children are rich or poor.
Right.
Poor Chinese children do better than everybody else except well-off Chinese children.
Absolutely fascinating, and that's a conversation you would say we would probably not have unless you lifted the lid on these taboos.
Well, actually, why not have that conversation so we can see what these families are doing? And if it is possible, I'm assuming it's not genetic, it's something to do with the way they operate and so on, then for God's sake, why shouldn't the rest of us learn it and apply it with our own families and our own children, improve their performance? Some work that's been done at Bristol University by Professor of Economics Simon Burgess there shows that, and he shows that, for example, the huge improvement in London children's performance over the last decade can be accounted for by the fact that high-performing minorities have expanded in number, Chinese, Africans, Indians, Poles, and the low-performing groups like mine, African Caribbean and poor white, have reduced in number. But he's also shown a really interesting thing, which is that the children who come from those low-performing groups, actually, particularly whites, improve when they're in a classroom with a critical mass of the high-performing groups, particularly, for example, the Indians.
And yet they are being encouraged, more so than ever in this country at the moment, to believe that the presence of, quotes, foreign children in their classrooms is holding back their own children.
And that is why putting the facts out there doesn't necessarily... I mean, actually, putting the facts out there is what will shoot the extremists and nutters. But it doesn't,
does it? Because to bring it back to Mr. Farage, he sat here bloviating about the dangers of having children with English as a second language, and then went a bit weird when I pointed out that would include his own children and got carted out of the studio by his PR. So the danger of taking the conversation to the facts is that the people who are manipulating and abusing the facts will continue to do so.
Well, I'm so happy to be on a programme where the host can use the word bloviating and know that his listeners will know what he
should tune
means.
in to Phone Boris, Trevor.
Knows what, but actually, in a way, that's the point. What you did with Nigel Farage, who, by the way, I'm not saying is a bad guy, but what you did with Nigel Farage would help to expose to listeners what the facts around that argument were. And I think that we have to be confident enough in the public to know that they can tell, gold from bullcrap.
And that is quite a big ask. I mean, in terms...
Why?
Well, because it depends how determined you are to be frightened and angry. If your whole life is somebody else's fault, the last thing you want is somebody coming forward and saying, actually, no, it isn't. You cling, and you get this particularly with the UKIP diehards. They refuse to acknowledge the possibility that their own failures and their own inadequacies aren't the fault of people like you, black men, who came over here years ago and stole all our jobs and women.
Well, they could... I don't know about the last. Not that successful on that one, but look... they can think what they like. There is going to be that fringe. But we cannot have what is, by the polls, one of the 2 or 3 most important issues to the public in this country: immigration and race, the pace of change, how we deal with diversity in our communities. We cannot have it controlled by the lunacies of an extreme fringe. We have got to capture this discussion back to the centre, to the mainstream. And, my view about this is that people can absolutely say what they like about me or anybody else, but if we have this conversation out there, they have to deal with the facts, not with the conspiracies, not with the mutters and the rumours. They have to deal with the facts. The more we say, oh no, we mustn't talk about it, the more that they win. Silence in this case is the enemy of justice.
And the enemy of radio phone-ins as well. Trevor will be staying with us for a little longer. The phone lines are open, 0345 60 60973. I'll be turning to your calls after Trevor has left us, but if there's something you urgently want to put to him or bring to his attention, I know he'd be happy to help. 20 minutes after 11, you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC.
I'm Chris Gold in the LBC Travel Centre. This just coming in for the M1. It's currently blocked in both directions because of an accident between junction 11 for Dunstable Road and junction 12 for Flitwick. It's because the air ambulance is attending an accident. There are queues on both approaches. In South Croydon, the traffic lights aren't working on the A23 Purley Way at Five Ways Corner. There's only one lane open on all approaches, so you can't turn right. Plus, there was an accident there this morning. That cleared just after 8, but it's still very slow from Dewey Crescent and from the Croydon flyover. Police there directing traffic. Police are also directing traffic after an accident involving a car and a bus on the high road in Leytonstone. The road was completely blocked for a recovery of the car about half an hour ago, so it's causing long delays on both approaches. Particularly bad, looking at it on camera, southbound and approaches towards the Green Man roundabout from Snaresbrook and from Gants Hill. In West Yorkshire, the M62 is currently closed in both directions because of a serious police investigation between junction 27 for Gildersham and 26 for Chainbar. It's causing delays back to Bridge House, plus also on the M62 towards junction 28 for Tingley, so best to avoid if you can. Surrounding routes are also congested as well. There's more detail online at lbc.co.uk. Keeping you moving in next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC. Experian, helping you take control of your credit report for a brighter financial future.
One of the most important things to do if you have been refused credit is to understand why. That will then leave you in a better position to make further applications. For example, if there are areas you need to improve upon, then that will give you the opportunity to do that.
Visit lbc.co.uk to find out more about using your credit report when planning for your financial future, plus your chance to win a high-tech bundle. Experian. It's your credit report. Use it.
Getting twitchy around messy eaters. Washing socks in the bath. Sniffing shirts. going face first into the laundry bin, like a pearl diver, searching for that clean pair of pants, running scared. From ketchup. Life's hard when your washing machine packs up. That's why we'll deliver and install your new machine in one visit. Plus recycle the old one, even at weekends. Know-how from Curry's PC World. We start with you. Delivery in most areas, subject to availability.
Spring, and as life returns to the garden, the timely offers return to Wix. The magnificent Flymo Speedy Mow, now half price at only $49.99. A mighty Hoselock 30-metre hose with reel and spray gun, half price, now $34.99. All the right products to transform your garden at the right prices. Available right now to click and collect in just 1 hour. Wix. Let's do it right. For offer end dates, see wix.co.uk, available while stocks last.
The smarter way to manage business expenses. Presented by Concur.
I checked out of my hotel and the bill was automatically added to my expense claim. Then I hopped into a taxi, I took a picture of the receipt using Concur, and there it was, on my expense claim. Then I used my corporate card to buy the client's lunch. Another charge added to my expense claim.
Expenses that write themselves. Just one of the many ways Concur helps manage your company's spend, so you can focus on the big picture. Take a free test drive at tryconcur.co.uk.
A new home can be full of nasty surprises. Oh, that's a utility bill. Always creeping up on you, that one. Oh no, that's the council tax. It's grown. Ah, that repair bill came out of nowhere. According to a recent Mars survey, 1 in 5 first-time buyers regretted buying their home. So before you buy, make sure you've planned for all your ongoing costs. Boo! The Money Advice Service. Free and impartial advice worth following.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Just another 5 minutes or so with Trevor Phillips, then over to your calls. And we are talking about a programme due to be broadcast on Channel 4 at 9 o'clock tonight, entitled Things We Won't Say About Race That Are True. And I guess I'll just turn to my own inbox, Trevor, to show you what worries me in terms of who really wants the freedom to say these things and why they want it. Two metro elite communists having an Anglophobic love-in on LBC at the moment.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
There is a moment.
Let's compare membership cards.
Well, it's interesting. There's a moment in the film where I am talking to Tony Blair, and I said to him, I was at the UKIP conference, and what they really resent are liberal metrosexuals like you and me talking down to them.
Talking down is a good phrase.
Exactly, and telling them what to do. And Tony, he looked at me and he said, metrosexual, what's that?
Oh, good grief.
But I think that this is a fundamental point about what drives parties like UKIP and their equivalents, actually, across the continent. I wouldn't say the National Front in France is a UKIP equivalent, but it's a far-right party, anti-Semitic background. They will win the local elections that are taking place in France this weekend.
Yes.
Now, it isn't because all French people have turned into ghastly racists and bigots. It is that they hate the political elite, who they think patronise them, won't talk about the things that they're interested in. So when Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front, comes along and says, all these other posh people, whether they're socialists or Sarkozy or whoever it is, they talk down to you, they won't talk about things you care about, but I, Marine Le Pen, am ready to work on your agenda, which is immigration, hating the EU and so on. They don't care about her policy. What they care about is that she is acknowledging and recognising them.
Well, you're describing a mood rather than an ideology.
Yeah, I mean, my view is that actually UKIP is really a pressure group. It's not a political party. I mean, they've got like 2 policies, and they can't
agree on them.
And exactly, and they don't really care what those policies are very much.
But you're talking down to them now.
No,
I'm not. You are. The people listening will feel, who are you?
You haven't let me finish my sentence.
Right, sorry, carry on.
Because what they are doing is something that none of the other parties currently can do. They are riding a cultural wave. The reason that Nigel Farage resonates is not because, he's a bloke with a pint in a pub. That is patronising to think that that's what wins people over. It is because he is speaking in a voice that people think sort of recognises the things that are bothering them day to day. So it's a kind of cultural thing. Whereas they look at, there was a focus group, which I think Lord Ashcroft, the former Tory deputy chair, did, in which people were asked, what school did David Cameron go to? And everybody knows Eton. What school did Ed Miliband go to? Oh, he went to the same school, didn't he?
Oh, I see.
People think that we, the political classes, are basically have taken leave of the rest of the planet, and only people like Nigel Farage,
Dulwich College,
indeed, which he hides very well. Only not people like Nigel are on the ground with them.
With his children who speak English as a second language and his immigrant wife.
Well, it tells you something about how powerful the myth can be.
But now we're talking down to his followers, because it doesn't matter that his wife is an immigrant. It doesn't matter that his children are part of the very problems he describes. What matters is he says stuff we agree with about foreigners, about Romanians.
To be honest, I think it's more that he says it in a way that people feel comfortable with. Whereas, I mean, we can get into the sort of detail of it. But I think one of the problems about politics is that hardly anybody, with the exception of, say, Boris or Alan Johnson, speaks English in politics anymore.
True, yeah,
they come in here and they give you the jargon.
Over firm denials.
Yeah, and you just want to say, even people like me who are steeped in it, we sit there and we listen to the radio, and I sometimes just have my head in my hands going, please
answer the blinking question.
And just talk like a human being.
Yes, I think everyone's going to recognise that. So what's the next, in an ideal world? Because I've been contemplating what the country would feel like if we just did allow political correctness to go mad and stop talking about all this stuff. Even the people who are desperate to talk about it don't seem to be any happier now that they're allowed to. So what for you is the ideal next chapter in the race debate? You don't yet believe, for example, that the work of your former employers, what was the Commission for Racial Equality, is over. You don't think their work is not done, and yet some anti-racism groups have come down quite heavily on you for the sort of brouhaha surrounding tonight's broadcast. What's the next chapter? What do you want to happen next? What do you hope will happen next?
Undoubtedly some people will say complain, but I have to say the people who are complaining are the same people who were saying to me 2 weeks ago, you've allowed race to slip off the agenda.
Yes.
Now it's all over the papers. They suddenly decided, actually, they don't want it, mainly because it's not saying what they want to say. I mean, the basic point is, I've tried to paint an honest picture of the situation rather than deliver a Guardian editorial on TV. Now, okay, condemn me for that, but that's what I do. Now, what is the next step? Well, the next step is, for God's sake, everybody step back. Talk honestly, treat other people like human beings. I never want to see another situation like the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, where the guy who doesn't have to say anything at all about race is in an interview promoting his film, says something important and positive, and gets buried because he uses what is, I suppose, here an old-fashioned word, but which, by the way, in the United States, if you want to talk about black and Latin Hispanic people together, you will use the phrase people of colour.
Yes.
That is the term of art. And I think that's what he was trying to say. But actually, what we remember from that interview is he used the wrong word, rather than he was trying to speak up for black actors. Now,
and you've still got the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People in America, so the confusion is palpable.
And the crime about that, for me, is not just, disrespecting Cumberbatch's efforts, but what it means is the next time a white person wants to say something on behalf of a minority, they're going to think, with the best will in the world, ooh, am I going to make things worse? Maybe I should leave it to a black person to say this. And that puts us way back into the 1970s, when it was just us and nobody else speaking up for us. That's got to be wrong.
And then this is a sort of curious mixture of self-righteousness and the opposite, the kind of journalists who are much more interested in giving Cumberbatch a coating for using a word, and then they can surreptitiously and subtly suggest that it's outrageous that he shouldn't be allowed to use. How do you tell the difference between a poor fellow who's used the word coloured and being called a racist utterly unjustifiably, and someone who actually is unpleasant in their views and vile in their prejudices and demands the right to use this language or to use golly dolls or all those sort of things for nasty reasons because they can march under the same banner that you're marching under?
Well, I think my answer to that is I know it when I see it, but that's not a very useful answer to anybody else.
For you.
But what I will say is, why do we need to call people things? You will see in the programme, I don't think I ever use the term racist, except in quoting somebody else, because I think as a word, it has now become so widely used for such a wide range of things that we've devalued it, and
it's lost its power. Yes.
That's my view. It's lost the significance of it, and it means, by the way, that we are often pointing in the wrong direction about things. So, for example, you've talked on this programme, I know, about the John Terry, Anton Ferdinand incident. And in the programme, I talked to Les Ferdinand about it. My question, I won't tell you what he says, but my question to Les is, millions of column inches, acres of time devoted to that incident, almost nothing still to the question of why isn't Les Ferdinand, dominant player of his generation, really good footballing brain, why isn't he a football manager? He says to me, I said to him, how many times have you been tapped up to be a manager? He said, once, by the chairman of Bournemouth. And you know what's significant about that? Chairman of Bournemouth is not white. Les Ferdinand has only ever been approached for a first-team coach job by one person, and a person who's not white. Now, that's the big scandal. A third of our footballers, top footballers, are black. 3 of our 92 professional managers are black?
And yet the people who will be most happy to see you saying that, in fact, here you go, Roy in Brookman's Park, I was saying exactly this in the 1980s, when was your moment of conversion? The people who'd be most happy to hear you say that will now, and I don't know if this is true of Roy, but they'll now be saying, oh, here you go, he's playing the race card, chip on his shoulder.
I think they ought to watch my programme, because I suspect they will find that I'm not saying exactly the same thing as they're saying.
And indeed I will be. 9 o'clock tonight, Channel 4. Things we won't say about race that are true. You can say whatever you want about race after this. It's Trevor Phillips, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
34 minutes after 11. I'm James O'Brien. This is LBC. Eleanor Noakes has the headlines.
The Foreign Secretary has confirmed a British woman was among those killed